Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Tin Man's book reading on the Tin Man Collection channel. I thought I'd come up with a new intro for this whole series, but today, look at another chapter out of the South Carolina Ghost from the Coast to the Mountains by Nancy Roberts, and this chapter is called The Hitchhiker of Route 107. So, here we go. Sometimes, after interviewing a number of people, it is necessary to select the most likely central figure in an extraordinary drama. No one is quite certain of Larry Stevens' age, although most guess that he was about 30. During the 1950s, Stevens kept a small plane at the Greenville Spartanburg Airport. A solitary sort of chap, he was always flew along and often wore a shabby black raincoat. We asked the reader's patience if the following account of Larry Stevens' flight on one April afternoon must include a certain amount of conjecture. When they say that, I'm kind of worried, but all right. Here we go. For this quite shy young man, the bright yellow plane trimmed with black was the great adventure. When he flew, he felt bolder and more daring than he ever did on the ground. That spring afternoon, his strong, thin fingers checked the plane as usual. He poked his head with the straight, blonde hair and his face with its long, thinnish nose everywhere, and the blazing blue eyes, which were his best feature, made a careful pre-flick check of his aircraft. He did this even if he had just taxied up to the gas pump in perfect condition. Seems like that guy was thorough on his checking. But anyway, Stevens' takeoff was smooth, and in a few minutes he had left the Greenville Spartanburg Airport behind and was heading toward the mountains. As he looked down at the lush green valleys and purple shadows on the flanks of the mountains, he lost all track of time. Finally, he found himself in the midst of that ruddy golden light that, although it lasts only a few minutes, transforms everything into another world, that it's greener, brighter, purer. Larry braked the plane as if by doing so he could savor that magical late afternoon light, hold fast to the moment, and spin it out into eternity. Moments later, the sky began to turn a smoky gray over the mountains, ranges, and light had fled. That tells you a storm's about to come. Better take cover or something. Now the wind was rising. Not enough to worry him. Just a reason for caution. Stevens knew he should be turning and heading toward Greenville. Clouds above and mountains below. It was the story of dangerous flying, and like all good pilots, Larry had a healthy respect for bad weather. A few drops of rain spattered across the windshield in front of him. Then it was a downpour, increasing in tempo until it drummed the top of the plane with a slow, steady roar. I was scared of being in a plane when it's raining. All at once the sound changed, and it was that of 1,000 machine guns trained on his little plane. He was in the midst of a hailstorm. Bouncing through the turbulent air, the plane began to buck wildly. Sweat rained in rivulets down Larry's forehead, trickled across his cheeks, slid down his collar. The back of the shirt was so wet he could feel it clinging to his shoulders. As he leaned forward trying to see, the weather had closed in, and all he could do was fly on. Stevens checked his compass, and his heart began to pound, for he was heading now in the direction of Greenville, but west over the mountains. He tried to take a deep breath to calm himself. Suddenly there was an awesome silence. The vibrating sound of the plane and even the slight quiver of the stick in his hand ceased. The engine, quite without coughing, or even clearing its throat. Larry Stevens was going down, and the last sound he would ever hear was that of rain pelting his plane. As he watched the altimeter unwind madly, The following morning, a plane flying over the area near Walla Halla saw something shining in yellow on the side of the mountain. It was not far from Moody Springs, a natural mineral springs the U.S. Forest Service had beautified for travelers. The pilot turned back and circling near Highway 107 discovered that a small plane had gone down in the mountain. Rescuers found the aircraft damaged to such a degree it seemed impossible anyone could have survived. And there's a picture of, I don't know if you can see it, of Route 107 when it's nighttime. But here it goes. It says search parties combined the woods. The trees were not yet in leaf, making their task easier. Certainly there must have been a pilot, yet no body was ever found. Not long after a crash, people began to tell a weird tale about a 2-mile stretch of road, Highway 107. This road connects near Oconee State Park with Highway 28, the main road that leads through the South Carolina Piedmont towns of Anderson, Pendleton, Clemson, Seneca, Walla Halla, and on into the North Carolina mountains to highlands. Moody Springs is a few miles above Walhalla and 2 miles beyond. As you climb into the mountains, it's the popular scenic Piedmont overlook. Travelers often park here to admire the view extending for miles in the direction of scenic Seneca and Clemson. One rainy afternoon, interior decorator Mike McNeil was coming home along the road after a consultation in Highlands. He concentrated on the windy mountain road, for it began to rain, like it did with that pilot. As it grew darker, the rain increased, and he was relieved to note the approach to the Piedmont overlook not far from his home. As he rounded the curve, the beam of the headlights outlined the dark silhouette of a man there at the overlook. Something about the way he stood, shoulders hunched and coat collar turned up, made him appear wrenched indeed. McNeil slowed and pulled over beside him. Need some help? I'm on my way to Walla Halla, and can I give you a lift? Says, yes, I would certainly appreciate it, replied the man. McNeil quickly unlocked the door on the other side and pushed it open for the man to get in. He wore no hat, and rivulets of water from his hair poured down across his trickling pale face. The man sat down beside him, and McNeil noticed that his black raincoat was drenched, water flowing along each fold, as though they were small, winding streams. When he happened to glance at his companion's shoes, he saw only a solid, muddy mass. He could hardly tell human feet were inside them. That tells you he's probably a ghost traveler. I must get out at Moody Springs, his passenger said with his face turned toward the window. Moody Springs was just 2 miles from where he had picked him up. Are you sure that is where you want to get out? There's really nothing there, said McNeil, surprised. Oh, yes, that is where I must go if I am to be on my way home, replied the stranger. Mike tried to catch a better glimpse of his passenger's face, and what he saw was a blank and expressionless that made his skin crawl. He might as well have been riding with a dead man. It'll make my skin crawl if I see that. At Moody Springs, his passenger got out without thanking him or even saying goodbye. That's kind of rude. And it seemed as if he was borne away like a vapor upon the night air. Mike McNeil felt considerably shaken as he drove home. The next morning, his car seat was still wet, and the puddle of water covered the floor in front of the passenger seat.